Hey, welcome to another Cosmic Creator Coven Conversation, and I'm here with Emi Preston, transcending cycles through transformation of consciousness. And Emi is my Sun Oracle Artemis Girl, and we met in 2017 at the U District Yoga Studio in Advanced Series, and we became best friends. And she lives across the street from me. I manifested that. And I'm gonna let Emi introduce herself a little bit more. And we're talking about transcending cycles through movement.
Yes. Hello, my name is Emi Preston. I work as a speech therapist at an elementary school, and I do a lot of things. Most recently, my passion has been contortion. I've really gotten into the contortion world. I love training with my coach, Gunnar Field, splits_whisperer on Instagram. And prior to that, I was deep in the yoga world, Bikram yoga and the Ghosh style 84 yoga. Did a yin yoga teacher training with Jordan last year, and that's the only training certification I have in anything. Prior to yoga, lifting was my life. My sister and I were the benching beauties. We were on social media as the benching beauties. I still really enjoy lifting. My sister also really enjoys lifting still. And
sensual movement.
Yeah, sensual movement. So that's I've loved to dance my whole life. Just dancing in my room has always been one of my greatest joys. When I was in high school, I would watch music videos and just put a section on repeat, just go back and back and back. It wasn't always on YouTube necessarily, and would just practice in front of the mirror and try to get these moves down. And that love of dance has continued, and it's actually been really beautiful because I was posting a lot of stuff on social media and also posting my dance, but I would always post it in my story where it would disappear after 24 hours. So it wasn't a big commitment. And it also wasn't this, I don't know if I guess we all have primary ways we identify ourselves, because part of the human experience is having an ego. And I identify as a contortionist now, which that's a whole story. That was an ego thing, being also this ball is super cool. Whoa. Yeah, so I guess I didn't feel comfortable identifying as a dancer. I just loved to dance. And then there was also that imposter syndrome in the back of my head, if I don't have credentials or certification, it's just my lived experience doing this thing. I don't feel that I am qualified to share this with people. I can post about it, but I don't, there is that piece that wanted to have some formal something or other behind things that I was saying, hey, I can teach people this, help people with this. And I actually had a friend reach out to me on Instagram and ask if I had ever considered offering dance lessons for people. And it was funny because the dance videos in my stories, those were what were getting the most responses out of anything I was posting of bending my body in half or, the cute selfies. And I was no, the imposter syndrome, but that really lit a fire in me. It sparked something, and it started, the wheels of change started going, and I've stepped into that role of offering sensual movement lessons, embodiment lessons for people, and it has been so heartwarming and brings me so much joy. It lights me up to have a session with someone where I am just we're rolling around in our respective homes on Zoom, and it's just like, oh, do this. And
the cricket one is my favorite one.
Yeah, the cricket legs. Yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I'm just like so hyped. Like I get high off of them, and it's amazing.
I feel like for you and I, movement's been a big part of our friendship, because it really started out like, you know, I used to see you and Yumi, your sister, at the district studio, and I would be like, ask the studio owner Whitney, I'd be like, are the Preston sisters here, you know? And it was like, because I feel like we bonded really a lot through that practice and that experience, because you're kind of moving and you're literally moving your bodies in sync and rhythm. It's like this, you know, the pendulum coming into, like when the balls like sink into, so you're starting to sync your whole rhythm together. And then to have a place like where we're struggling, and it builds like this huge level of trust, because you're extreme as like a practitioner, you're extremely vulnerable. And then from there, like our friendship just like blossomed even more in terms of like movement, because you and I both, we always like say we're like Capricorn and Mars.
Yeah.
And I also think it's interesting because like Mars was a warrior, and in order to learn how to fight, he had to learn how to dance first. And so like you and I both have this like warrior goddess energy, and then this like heavy dance goddess energy.
Yes.
And like that movement of cycles. And then from there, I feel like it started to progress. Like, yes, we were like grabbing our ankles and back bends and all this stuff. But then it moved into even more dance, and like that was our happy hour on Friday nights, was dancing.
It was everyone's oasis.
It was everyone's oasis during the quarantine. I actually was informed by somebody that they used to drink beers and watch us dance on Instagram during quarantine. So like,
your Friday night entertainment right here.
And I think it was just beautiful, because at least for me, and dancing with you, and you and I, we work so well together, and then we're also like very different proportions and very different vibes,
like opposite proportions.
Opposite. But it was like this, for me, it was it healed so much of myself to move into dance with like freedom and that joy, and then also just to like witness how, you know, we were going to advanced class in yoga, and how you've still just like expanded and found more and more ways to like move. And it's such an integral part of our friendship, and the way we relate together, or even when we go to the park and we'll just sit by each other and kind of like move for a little bit and then fall asleep and sunbathe, and we can talk to each other with just our movement. We don't even have to use, like, our consciousness is totally embodied in our movement. And just watching that shift, and the ways that you've also helped me to reconnect to like central parts of myself through allowing that movement to come through, and that energy. I mean, it's emotion, it's energy and motion and movement. And I've always thought like that you could do like absolutely anything. Like that's like everything's possible to you, like pure potentiality in human form. And I think that's like super inspiring for people. And so whenever like you've had like a fear come up, I was like, girl, like you can literally sit on your own head. I'm not worried about anything.
That's like almost baseline now. It's really cool.
And I just feel like, for me at least, I look at that embodiment, and it's a total expression of like limitlessness in terms of the body, but it's actually coming from limitlessness in the mind, and also in the emotions too, like limitless emotions. So,
I think our friendship is really unique in that aspect. I don't have any other friendship quite like ours. And I think we don't have any relationship with any human. It's like any other relationship with any other human, but ours is really special. Like the way we both so intensely and like so gently and beautifully view the human body as a tool of ascension, and like that complete understanding that any change that has taken place on the outside in your body, in your movement practice, is stemming from a change on the inside. And like as within, so without. Like as we are transforming our physical movement practice, we're transcending limiting beliefs in ourselves. And I know when I first, like, I don't know if I'd even met you at district yogas where we met. Hi, Whitney.
Hi, Whitney. Love you.
And I was like, oh my gosh, she's like so tall, like such long legs, such an advanced practice. I bet she just walks around all the time. Like her hamstrings are so loose. I think you probably had full wheel. Full wheel is the one where you're like standing and then you like go backwards and you grab your ankles while you're standing. I think you probably had full wheel at that time.
Yeah, I had just barely gotten it.
Yeah, and like great standing head to knee, like the postures that I was like, those are reach postures for me. Standing head to knee is still like, I can do it when I'm on a stage, like when people are watching me, but when I'm just like,
Capricorn and Mars, lock that shit down.
Yes, I'm bent, unbroken, unbowed. But I was just like projecting all these stories onto you, and that's what we do, right? When we don't know someone, and even after we know them, like I'm like, oh, like what do you, like I was like, she walks around all the time. That's why her hamstrings are so loose. So I went up to her and I was like, oh, like what's your name? Like what's your job? And she was like, oh, I don't even remember if you were working at the same place, but you were like, I was like, oh, do you like sit all day? And she was like, yeah, it's a desk job. And I was like, she must take breaks. Like she gets up like every 15 minutes and takes a lap around her office. Like my ego was so convinced that you had to be just like moving all the time to have the practice that you did. And I think it's just, this might be a reflection point for people who are watching this video, because like Jordan and I both work desk jobs. And you can have absolutely everything you want.
Yes.
Your body is your creation, and it's a beautiful balance of like being under your control. I am in control of my body. If I fall out of a posture, it's because I've chosen to fall out of a posture. It's not because I lost my balance. It's not because I wasn't strong enough. You chose to fall. You didn't choose to fight for it. It's all about choice. It's all about sovereignty. And like once you really like are in a movement practice and like spending so much time just rolling around on the floor and like being in your body, and also being in stillness, because it's not, you're always rolling, you don't have time to integrate like what's coming through. That's another thing recently, is like when I feel tired, if I can, I always can, it's a choice. But if I choose to, I try to make it a priority. I'll just lie down, even if it's for 30 seconds, to be like, okay, I feel like codes coming through, I feel upgrades coming through, and this like moment of tiredness is because I need to integrate this. And if I can take a nap in that moment, I'll just set a timer if I need to get up for like a Zoom or something. And if I don't have something going on, I'll just let myself fall asleep. And that's actually been really healing for me. And part of my movement journey, coming from lifting, being really like aggressive, dominant, masculine energy, which is like right there for me. It's been over the past benching beauties, but it's been some of my greatest work the last few years, really learning how to slow down. Like that's been a process actually. It started when I was lifting. It started when my relationship with lifting started to change, which is also when my relationship to food started to change, and my relationship to my body. And I'm at a place now where I actually feel like I have completely healed from disordered eating and disordered body image. This is something we've been talking about recently. And I just want to put this out there that it is possible to entirely heal from something, be so completely healed that you feel like that chapter is closed and it's never going to open again, and you're never going to go back there because like this has opened, and you see with the true eye. It cannot be unseen.
I think it's interesting that you bring up that too, is like as far as like disordered eating, and like I feel like for me, like I did have disordered eating in like 2009 through like I would say 2011 prior to starting yoga, and like looking in the mirror and just like that's part of the Bikram series, and like moving with this body and seeing this body not as like this like voyeuristic thing or this like object for somebody else, but it was like the embodiment of my power. And at the time it was kind of like, it was very, I want to like urchin shriveled power, and that's how it was like representing in my body, like literally a crooked spine, you know, crooked mind, like the way that I was viewing myself, and just being in front of like the mirror and like loving myself in front of the mirror, and actually seeing like women of all shapes and ages in you know, sports bras and shorts, and just like loving what's there. And in yoga you get very comfortable with like your rolls and like I have cellulite, I have like rolls, I have all that stuff. And at this point too, like I feel completely like healed of that as well. And I do think it's possible. I think within sometimes in spiritual communities there's this like, oh, you're constantly healing. I do not believe that. I believe you can absolutely be healed of something. Because the fundamental belief is if you're constantly healing, that there's something broken about you, but your innateness, your innate purity, your innate form is wholeness. And so it is possible to be completely healed. And now I just like wake up and I'm like, I'm always like my ideal body.
Yes.
That's all I say. Like I'm always my ideal body shape.
Yes.
And I do think it's like beautiful, because in terms of like what you're saying about like, oh, she must like walk around, like you and I have like fought tooth and nails for the movement in our body. But then also I feel like the past few years we've been incorporating like more surrender and ease, and like things have just kind of been flowing to us a little bit more. And you provided like such a beautiful mirror for me, because there were postures that you had access to that I didn't have access to yet. And one of them was like Hasana.
Locust pose.
Yeah, locust pose with like the legs up.
You're like on your belly, your chin is out,
down,
and
and the legs
your legs go up. We've done this one at the airport so many times. I'm sure people watching this have
But
seen
it took me like 7 years, and you know, part of like you and I have always called each other to like our best and our like highest standard, and like like, you know, like when I have literally been on stage, I have heard your words from the hot room in my head, like boom, boom, you know, strong, or like one more time, like just hearing those words in my head. And just like, because we've both been in, like, we're both gladiators in the arena, and so it's like
the dust flowing.
The dust, like you gotta feel the dust in your fingertips, like, so it's really, it's, you know, people sitting in the audience, like figuratively, who are critics of this like movement or critics of what you could do. It's like, why would I accept or value their opinion when like you've been in the arena, or like some of the coaches or teachers we've trained with, like they've been in the arena too, and like that trust. And I kind of am weaving, but all that to say is like, I do believe it's like 100% possible to be completely healed of something. And because you're really just shedding this, like, you know, you're serpent queen, you're shedding the old skins and the old, like, as you do that through your body and through your shape shifting, you're shape shifting your mind. And sometimes we're working on the physical embodiment to shape the mind, and then sometimes it's the mind that's going to shape the body. And I just, like, some of the things you say to me, like the other day I was like, well, I don't have, like, you know, this posture, and you're like, you have it, Jordan. Like, and I'm like, okay, yes I do. Yes, I do.
We live in wish fulfilled.
We live in wish fulfilled. But it's beautiful because you have helped me to expand, and I manifested you. Like, I dreamed of a friendship like you for years, actually. I remember back in like 2015, I was like, I just want somebody to train with and move with and like have fun with. And then like, you came in, and like it didn't all come in at once. And then last year during the pandemic, when I was like all alone here, I was like, I wish Emi lived close to me.
and then I come in like 3 months later. I
feel
here.
like I want to live across the street from you. I was like, yes. Put away the spell books. What? This is so weird.
So funny.
Yeah, but that movement is really something that's so integral to the trust that I feel like we have with each other.
Yeah, totally. And when you're talking about like the gladiator in the arena, it was making me reflect on like the masculine and feminine aspects of movement and how our bodies manifest at different times in our lives, and the types of movement that we're called to at different times in our lives, and how much stillness we're allowing, because stillness is actually the feminine, the yin, the counterpart. And like with the gladiator image, I was having this flashback to when I was in a co-ed non-residential business fraternity in college, and I was vice president of one of the committees, and I was giving a presentation in the Foster School of Business, like one of the rooms, and like the other people were like sitting in it was like arena style, like with the elevated seats and the curve around the edges of the room. And I remember the dress I was wearing. I don't think I still have the dress. It was black. It was like ruched on the side. It like came in right here, and like a V, and cut here. And like I was like in my lifting, and I'd also been laying out, so it was like I had a little bit of color, so the muscles were popping. And I just remember I'd like practiced this speech so many times, and I was like standing up there like giving this presentation to people, and it's like the king posture. Like when you're embodying your masculine, it's like queens do this too, right? And I mean, you don't have to identify as a king or a queen to do this, but if you're feminine queen person, if that's how you identify, like you can be in your masculine energy and like have this presence. It's like, boom, here I am. Like these chest muscles, the shoulders, like you're open and you're like, I have nothing to hide. Like, come to me. Come.
It's like literally the fucking candle we're burning right now.
Come to me.
And then I lit the candle and you're like, I just got a tea bag that said come to me.
Yeah, literally I pulled out one of the yogi tea bags and that's what the little thing said. And so, and like, I remember like standing up there and being like, the glory of God is upon me. Like it was that kind of just radiating like massive energy, and like everyone could feel it, and like people were coming up to me afterwards and like telling me that they had felt that. And that's something that I think I always had, that like radiance inside, and like people could feel that, they could sense it, but I wasn't always consistently embodying it on the outside. And when I got into lifting, like at that time in my life, I needed to feel big. Like physically, I wanted to take up more space. Like that was the appropriate physical expression of what was internal for me at that time. It was like taking up space, using my voice, even though at the time it was like talking about lifting and encouraging women to get into the gym. It was doing it from this like self-righteous pedestal-y place, because there's literally no one who is like a logical person who's gonna be like challenging you and saying, no, women shouldn't be in the gym. It's like, come at me, bro. Like, who's gonna tell me women can't be in the gym? And it's like crickets. Like, no one's gonna tell. So I'm just like, yeah, let me just preach from my pulpit. No one can say anything against me. So I definitely had that. Like, it was like an ego. It was an ego thing. It was like that's why we.
I don't think that, but I don't think the ego is necessarily like a bad
It's not a bad thing. It was like that was just part of the path. And then I remember there's a very specific time when I started. There's like a day I allowed myself to lie down and take a nap, and that was when I like the feminine was starting to come in, and it wasn't this warped feminine energy that I had been embodying previously, where it was like sometimes it was like full and true and authentic, and then other times it was what I thought I needed to be doing. And yeah, and then as I mentioned before, like actually physically resting, that's also what started to change my relationship with food and my body. And something I was going to say earlier too is like the idea of like I wake up every day and tell myself like my body is perfect, I have the ideal body type. Like,
I'm not saying like a specific, but just like it's just like my awareness is like, you know, because yeah, I just want to make sure, because like there were so many ways that I had been taught to like fight against my body for years, and it's like, you know, these like, oh, like like my breasts are too small, like this is like this, or I have a little bit of cellulite here, and like really yoga just taught me to be like, this is perfect the way it is, this is good, my legs aren't too long, my arms aren't too long, like it's fine just the way it is, like, and just releasing all of those like attachments that had been put on it, or I needed to be a certain way, or even like, you know, we've talked about like at length like all these like certain stories that almost weren't our stories that got put on our bodies, and just like it's like this process of like shed skin, like really, like when we shed the skins, like we shape shift, we're shedding all of that bullshit that society has like put on us about like looking a certain way. And I feel like when you're talking about like being in that masculine energy, like when I came into Bikram yoga, it's a very masculine
that's why I liked it.
type of yoga, but I needed that like grounding and discipline and energy, because I felt emotionally very like alone and like depressed, and I was in a situation where I was actually surrounded by women who were not advocating for me, who were not treating me well, and then I got welcomed into this very masculine type of yoga with a bunch of beautiful maternal like women, and that just like healed so many parts of that for me. But the shedding of like the skin and the shedding of the stories, and to be able, I remember like the first time I bought, like I was wearing like long sweatpants and t-shirt to yoga for months, hot yoga. It was fucking miserable.
So you were like soaked. She was like taking a shower basically like, after class.
And then I saw this like beautiful woman who had you know, a double mastectomy, and she was just like completely like beautifully like in her full glory of God in the locker room, and she was, you know, in her 60s, and I just was like, this is the most beautiful thing. And then I went out into the lobby and bought myself my first pair of like Shakti shorts. And you know, at the time when like the shorts were all like the range,
the booty
shorts with the
scrunchy side.
The scrunchy, yeah, exactly. So it's like that transformation. And what it was is like my body was shifting, and my mind was like, this is no longer acceptable to look at yourself this way. It's no longer acceptable to like, because really you can manifest a change of appearance through a change of your thoughts, and like that's what happens all the time, at least with my students. I watch them come in, and it starts maybe first through quote unquote like physical manipulation of the body, and then maybe it's a mental ascension, or sometimes it's the mental ascension and then the body conforms. Like it's a cyclical process. But what you're saying, like that masculine energy, and I needed that for several years, like to kind of I think to heal the inverted masculine that I had experienced so heavily in my life. And then there was a point though, like especially like during like when I was like transitioning from like, you know, my previous life, where I was just like, this element of surrender like had to come in. Like I'd been striving and pushing and building for so long in this element of surrender. And I still remember when I was like, I literally, like this was pre-COVID, I literally had like a sinus infection, and I had to like, I couldn't talk, and I lost my voice, and I like remember just turning the class over to you and just like being like, I know you know it, like you go ahead and leave. And it was just like this element of surrender, like I can't push through this anymore, or like, and just allowing that to be to be okay. And but I needed to be like, it was several years that I needed to be in that very like masculine energy, and like but like the rigidness, like I didn't drink water, I didn't like sit down, I didn't take breaks. Now I'm just like, like I'm not gonna have some water here.
Yeah, there's
like,
a time and place for all of it.
Totally.
And it's wisdom of discernment to know when to push, when to pull, when to hold, when to fold.
Yeah. Oh, you fold all the time, girl.
What was I gonna say? I was gonna say about like taking it back to that idea of ideal body type. Yeah, and like it's all in your mind. Like, you can look at people on Instagram, on social media, and like say they have the ideal body, like they're perfect, and they're looking in the mirror and like maybe not having those thoughts about themselves. It's all in here. Like when I was lifting, it was bodybuilding, right? It wasn't powerlifting for performance. Like there was an aspect of like I'm feeling stronger, I'm feeling healthier, like I can bike up hills and not be like totally dead. Is like I enjoyed that aspect of it, but it was bodybuilding in the sense that it was to sculpt a physique. Like that was not, it was not for the, like there was the feeling of improvement in my body, but the primary focus was on my body and like not in a healthy way. And I was looking in the mirror every day and like pinching the fat around my belly and like saying like horrible, mean things to myself and punishing myself with the food I was eating and the food I wasn't eating. And yeah, so it's like, it's all in the mind.
And like that ideal body is like, when I say that, it's like my ideal body for whatever consciousness is expressing itself in this like form. And like I feel like you're your ideal body. And like I just like, you know, like there's just this, I feel like there is just like perfection and beauty, and it's like an art, it's like a beautiful art museum. You don't want the same fucking painting all like in every single exhibition room. You want like your neoclassical art, you want your Romanesque, like you want your romantic art, your Baroque. Like it's this like huge rich tapestry and just like appreciation of the body. And for me, like for the most part, like I look at students, I look at like it's just like beautiful art. And it's just like because the body's been completely like transformed into this like vehicle of power and expression. And you know, people sing with their voice. Like I paint with my body. That's like that's how I paint. And I think some people don't necessarily understand that in terms of yoga. It's like it's not a fitness thing for me. It's not even like a physical thing for me. It's like the way like I'm putting my soul and I'm painting it with a canvas, and the canvas is my body, and that's how I like feel about it. And I think it was really beautiful for both of us last year with the Great Pause to have the attachments of like studio and spaces kind of be taken away from us, and then to just spend all of our time in the park together moving and exploring that movement. And it wasn't with like, it didn't have any of that structure to it anymore. We were kind of just like exploring whatever we felt like in that moment and having that space to do that. And then also like trust, because I did have and you called me to higher standard here. I did have a lot of attachment to like the heat. Like I wanted the heat, and it still fucking feels amazing, like it does. But like to be able to free myself and free my practice and free my flexibility from the heat, that it was accessible to me. Like, and that's one of like the affirmations that I put in one of my subliminals. I was like, I'm strong and flexible in any environment. And like I meant that physically, not just like not emotionally, but I guess that can apply too. But that was something I put in my subliminals, like based on something like that you called me to a higher standard to like release that attachment. And it's another shedding of the skin over and over and over again. And it's like, just
And
the
it's
serpent,
just-
which I think you just have like this amazing, beautiful like serpent quality to you.
I never previously really identified with snakes, and I feel very sneaky at this time in my life.
You got your ring on.
It's a little snakery. I think the process of continuing to unfold in a movement practice, when done consciously, it's just a way of taking you deeper and deeper into yourself, and in doing so, it's just affirming over and over again that we are limitless. Every limitation is in our minds, because it's like you come upon these doors that previously you thought were closed to you. Like, I remember I was in a vinyasa class years ago, and when I was going to district, and the teacher at the time, she like noticed my practice and said, you're bendy. Like, have you thought about doing contortion? And I was like, oh no, I'm too old for that. I was 25 at the time. And I was like, I'm 25. And as I was saying this, like, I heard myself saying it, and I was like, what am I saying? Like, I'd never said that before, actually, to anyone. Like, I'm too old for that. Like, that wasn't really a belief in my head. I think that was someone else that, it had been imposed upon me, and it was like coming out. But the seed was planted there. And then there's another girl that ended up coming to that studio for a backbending challenge, and I connected with her. She was actually, I think we were the only two that showed up to the event, and I was like, oh, what do you do? And she was like, I'm a contortionist. And I was like, what? I've never met anyone who has ever identified as a contortionist. And she's like, this is my coach. And I started following him. I kept tabs on him, but I was too intimidated to reach out until I was in locust pose with my feet on the ground in front of me, trying to walk them out, and I couldn't figure out how to keep my airway open. I was like, I know I can go deeper, but I can't breathe. And it was such a mental exercise. Like, we don't need as much oxygen as we think we need. Like, you can stay and just, if you can calm your breathing, if you can stay in control of your breathing, you can stay in control of your body. And so it's just like calming down the mind, like counting to 10, being like, I'm okay. Like, there's less oxygen, but I'm okay. Walk the feet out a little more, breathe some more, walk them out, and you're like, okay, I'm running out of air. Hold 3, 2, 1, out. And then at some point I reached out to Versatile Arts, which is where my coach was working at the time, and scheduled a private with him. And when I was on my way driving there, I was like, who do I am? Do I think I'm actually a contortionist, like on level with the people that I see on the internet? Just like laughing hysterically in the car. And then I like parked, and I was like, okay, I'm going in. And then I go in, and it's a circus performing center, so everyone's like kind of running around. My coach was nowhere to be found. I waited like 15 minutes and finally flagged someone down, and she was like, let me like text him. And so she texted him, and she was like, he's at the gym right now. He can be here in 30 minutes. Can you wait? And I was like, okay, yeah, I don't have anything else going on. And like the whole time, I ended up waiting like almost an hour total. And the whole time I was like, I can leave right now. I can leave right now. Why am I waiting here? What am I waiting for? And it was like the universe was giving me a test. Like, how much do you want this? And like all of those old ego stories of imposter syndrome, like all the reasons, like I've had plenty of my own reasons. Like, my legs are short, my hamstrings are tight, my hips are internally rotated.
Mine's are externally rotated.
Yeah, opposite body types. Our torsos are like almost the same height, but I'm 4'11" and Jordan is
like 5'8".
Show my underwear. Yeah, so funny. She just has the albatross limbs.
But the test from the universe.
Yeah, it was a test from the universe for sure. And then Gunnar showed up, and she's like, what are you working on? And I was like, timidly, I was like, I'm working on this locust thing, and I'm working on a pike press handstand. He was like, okay, show me the pike press. I was like, okay, I'm not warmed up. I just like drove here from work. I was like working all day at my computer. And then it was like the pressure's on. I was like, and I just did it. Like I didn't think I could do it, but I did it because he was watching me. And then the rest is history.
Well, I think it's like, you know, in terms of like, because all of our postures and everything's like a manifestation. It's like manifestation. Like you had this wish, and so you were like naturally, like all of our, when we get this wish and we put it out there, it's the pathway of least effort. You will have to take some action, but will be least effort. And it's like, what are the odds that like you have this amazing world-class contortion teacher that's like 20 minutes to 30 minutes away from you, who has a schedule, and he's like, you know, he allows for that accessibility for so many students. And
he moved to Minnesota. He's not here anymore.
He's not here, but he does Zoom sessions.
Yes.
And to have that like wish come to you, and I think it's like kind of the same to me too, like in terms of yoga. Like you and I've kind of, while we're still like movement, we kind of are growing, like growing in different like areas. Like we're just different seeds and like flowering in different ways. And I love training with Gunnar because part of it is like I just feel like he's always expressing my subconscious, like the things that I'm like, I need an answer from my subconscious.
Gunnar's a life coach.
And then he like will say this like phrase, and I'm like, that's the answer I needed. Thank you. Like I just like this like oracle of wisdom, and in terms of movement, and the things that we're working on are just like very like micro opening and like talking to the stories in our body. And one of the things I wrote down that he said to me in February was like, your middle splits are within you, because somebody told me your femurs are too long to do middle splits. And he's like, and just that beauty of releasing the story, it's like, let that go. Your middle splits are within you, and just putting that declaration out. And so anytime I do feel like the old story in my body creeping up, I just hear his voice come in. And in terms of like, because I had this wish to be a yoga champion. And when I made that declaration in 2012, like just, I wanted it like a month after practicing. I saw the photos on the bulletin board, and I don't know how that came to me, but it was just like, I needed to do it. Like it was my duty to do this. And at the time though, it's like, you're a dark horse running in a fantasy. Like, what do you think you're doing? And I came in last, and I remember watching some of the other competitors and like seeing their practice on stage and seeing how amazingly open their bodies were and everything. And I just remember just like looking down because I didn't want to psych myself out before going on stage. And I just went full vulnerability and put it all out there. And it's not like it came overnight for me. Like I had people tell me I like moved like a robot, you know, and so like it's, but like, and it was, and I cherish that, like that Jordan who was up there in full vulnerability, because I did move kind of robotically because I didn't know how to move my body. And so sometimes it's like rudimentary and it's just like, you know, step by step. But this declaration of like, I want to be a yoga champion, and being, and like going to those situations being like, who do you think you are? And the first time that I won Washington State, like you said, it was a test. Like the car, like very reliable car, broke down on the way down driving to it. All this other stuff happened. I was like, I don't even know if I'm gonna make it there. And there was just like this moment of surrender, and I gave my best routine that I could, and I felt like I messed something up in one of the postures, and I just like sat down, and I just like took that in for a moment, and I just knew I gave like the best that I could, and I kind of just had surrendered in that moment to like the outcome of what was. And then like, you know, then like I won that year, and I was just like, but it was like this test, like, who do you think you are? Like, and constantly like
solar plexus.
Yeah, solar plexus, willpower, like imposter syndrome. but you're given this desire for some reason. And for me, it was like, this is the way that I want to choose to create art. This is how I want to express everything that's inside of me, because I have so much inside of me, and it all can't just come out in writing, and it all can't just come out in my words. It has to come out through my body. I have to paint with my body. Like, it just, there were so many levels. And you and I, like, we just, like, I love doing movement to, like, inspired by, like, certain tarot cards, you know, like, we draw on this inspiration, or, like, you know, I'm having, like, divine swan moment here, like, before it was, like, the sirens, and, like, you know, just, like, we live in this magical world where our bodies are part of, like, our bodies are our spell, like, it's our wand, too, you know, it's, like, it's just, like, how we incant as well.
Yeah.
Yes, and Gunnar, thank you. We love you so much. And Whitney, we love you. And all of our coaches, and I mean, all the ones I've trained with over the years. Yeah, anyway.
You brought up the park before too. Like, the park is a beautiful place where we practice. And it's so liberating to go with you or, you know, other friends who do movement, but especially you. Like, we have a very special bond, and the spot at the park is like our spot. And like, okay, maybe set up a donation box in the future. And because we put on a good show, and it's a show from the heart. It's so beautiful.
It's interesting because I feel like you and I, like, when we're alone, it's like we give each other courage too when we're there.
Yes.
And then I find, like, I feel when we're moving together, or we might not even be doing the same posture. You might be doing something completely different. I'm working on something different. But, like, it's like we're cloistered, and it's like this, we create this, like, this beautiful, like, realm, just, like, with our mind. And, like, I kind of just forget that anybody else is in the park until they, like, come up and talk to us. And I'm like, oh, but we've been in this magical realm by ourselves. Like, where did you come from? Like, you know, because we're just creating this, like, we are really actually existing in our own different dimension. We're like, we just quantum shift, and that's what happens sometimes when you move your body too, is like you're literally a quantum shifting. And I'm sure you probably felt it too, like you're in this one dimension with your body, and then all of a sudden, like, your mind shifts, and then you unlock a posture and you enter into another dimension. You're entering into another body completely. It's like, so you literally, like, I am not the same person I was, you know, when I first started yoga. I have leaped and quantum shifted. And I feel like the body and the movement of the body is a way to just leap and quantum shift so much, because you're doing it so rapidly, you're ascending so rapidly. And look like the way my hands are going right now. Anyway, I get excited.
We've talked about, like, how
that.
You're only as old as your spine, and you continue to unlock more and more of your spine. Like, I mean, you know, sometimes you get hooked back into the matrix, but we affirm that we are unhooked from the matrix. Like, I'm not part of time-space illusions.
Yeah.
We are de-aging.
I feel that way. I mean,
Ageless.
You're only, well, I mean, you're not even old as your spine, you're old as your mind.
Yeah.
And
your spine is your mind. Like, literally, the central nervous system, the only part of your central nervous system that we can physically manipulate is the spine. Like, all of those nerves run through it. Like, we can't mush our brain. It's held in here, but we can
activate the energy conduit and the synovial fluid. I just think that's really beautiful. I do think it was interesting because when I was in college, I did have roommates tell me, like, certain stories about my body, what would happen to me, and they were not worth repeating. But, like, I think about you and I, and probably all of because it's like, it's not always like, you're not always hearing your highest voice sometimes when you're practicing. You're hearing that the little doubt, the little naysayer in your head, and, like, you're just, like, sometimes I know you and I have, like, probably fueled, like, I'm hearing the high school gym teacher who told me I'd never be strong enough and I should just run laps. I'm hearing like the guy in 8th grade that told me I was like ugly. I'm hearing somebody who told me I was like flash chested. I'm hearing like all these stories, and I'm just like, and every time, like almost like when you back bend it or you move, it's like just like a giant like fuck you, you know, like fuck you, like I'm in charge here, I'm sovereign, I like my word's final, and the way that I'm gonna move my body is final. Or when people tell you like you're gonna hurt yourself or this or that, or like or even like in yoga, like, oh, if you do that you're gonna get hip replacement. That's fine if you want that belief. I don't believe that. I've practiced in therapeutically for almost a decade now, and my body just keeps like opening and opening and opening, because I trust myself, and I trust my body, and I trust the yoga, and I trust the postures. And I'm not going to, even in terms of the yoga, there are limiting beliefs about the yoga, and I'm sure like with contortion, like, so I don't need to accept your limits just because you accepted your own limits, like, and so like that declaration, or even like the declaration of limitlessness. Like I started to say you are limitless at the end of my yoga classes, like maybe almost 5 years ago, and I do not even know why I started to, like, or where that phrase came from. I can identify a lot of the other words that I like to use, but I don't even know where that came from. And it was like my higher self was like, claim this word, because it's gonna help you to call in all the other goals. Like, in your mind will be moved to have these words and thoughts come into your mind to help to move you to where you need to be. And sometimes that is a phrase to break down. If you hold the assumption I'm limitless, that will show up in every single area of your life.
Yes. And it's beautiful too, like you mentioned that when you practice or when you've been on stage, it's like strong, yes. Boom, boom, like the words that I have sent you in the hot room, like, or like in the subconscious mind. And I feel like a sponge in that way. It's really easy for me to like pick up on phrases and things that people have said, and sometimes I don't even remember where it comes from. It just becomes a part of me. But that time that you had lost your voice and you asked me to teach class, it was this beautiful like initiation moment of like, I was just like channeling all these words from my subconscious, like phrases that I mean, I knew they were inside me, but they were just coming out, and they're phrases and like ways of wording things in the 84 series, which doesn't have a dialogue, that are specific to Jordan. Jordan Lydia has like, these are her phrases, and we had just practiced together for so long, and they're just like deep in my subconscious. And the word limitless, actually, like I wasn't using it the way I use it now until I like really started to get to know you, and you were just like, I see you, I accept you, you are limitless.
Yeah.
Like at the end of your classes, and limitless really stuck with me. And like, yeah, it shows up in every area of your life. Like when you start to affirm things, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, we are always creating our reality, our perceived reality.
Yeah. That, I feel like that there's so many moments in 84 that are like sacred to me. It's like, it's not even about the postures themselves. It just feels like it's temple time for like that like community. And that was like one of the like most sacred moments. Was like, I literally lost my voice. I kind of like I had been running and like I was like this phoenix burning out, and I feel like I was finally like just extinguishing into ashes. You know, I was like, all right,
take me now.
I've become the ashes. And then I just like passed it on to you, and just like
you passed away.
It's just like, you know, well, to rise again.
Yeah,
for the ashes,
on the
but
third
to
day.
Yes.
She's just Jesus.
But
Jordan Christ.
Just hearing first Christ.
Christ.
To just hear like you just like channel that in and just be like, I've done my work. Because like, and like that a year prior to that moment, like where we were here in my house, and you were just kind of my student at the time, and I was making a really huge life decision, and I was like, I can't look at her and still stay in this situation. Like I can't go and be like, who's the most important person in your life? You are. And I can't say these words and be violating myself in my personal life. And so like just that like beauty, there's so many sacred moments, and one of them was like too, like when we were lying on the mat that one time next, like we would practice like right next to each other and just
like we would step on each other's mats,
sweat on each other. But I remember looking at the ceiling one day, and I was just like feeling very low, open, and vulnerable, and I was just like, I just really wish you would hold my hand right now. And it was Savasana because I didn't want to like, and then the next thing I know, you like held my hand, and I was just like miracles exist. Infinite miracles are made in the mind. So we've almost hit an hour, and I know,
oh my god,
I know we could talk for like,
well, I saw like a palindrome number is 54:45.
I know we could talk probably for like another hour, but any closing words, love?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. That's my closing words. I could talk about this for literally ever. I don't think a lot of people, it's quite unfortunate. Like they don't spend a lot of time in their bodies. Like we have bodies, and also if it can feel like a really scary place to be. And when you're someone who spends a lot of time in your body, like I feel like all of the wisdom that I have unlocked internally. And so, yeah, I have a lot of things that we could talk for like 10 more hours, but the phone would die probably. That's my closing thoughts.
You can always follow us on Instagram to watch like the oasis that we affirmed that we were giving everybody an oasis during the great pause, which was true. But
what's your closing thoughts?
My closing thoughts, goodness. The body is a vessel for transformation, and our society wants us to be alienated from our body right now. So we want our mind constantly active and stimulated by technology, but not actually home in our body. So come home. This like serpent energy. Come home to your body. Go to a yoga class. Sign up for Sensual Movement with my love here. She will customize it to wherever you are.
Yes, I'm coming up with different
Whether
offerings.
you're dipping a toe in, or you want to jump all the way into the sensual movement, or even just maybe even connecting with your breath in terms of that. And breath work can be a part of breath is the pranic body, so it's part of your body as well. So if actually moving your body feels overwhelming, start with the breath.
Embodiment is all of it. The base. The breathing is the fundamental. Like if you've mastered your breath, like this sky's the limit. Sky's the limit for what you can achieve in the physical body.
No nanoparticles.
No nanoparticles
on you.
We override. We override. None of that.
All right, ready? I love you.
I love you.
I value you.
I value you.
I accept you.
I accept you.
We are limitless.
We are limitless.
So mote it be.
So mote it be.
As I speak it, I create it.
As I speak it, I create it.
Seal to the kiss.
Seal to the kiss. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.